All right, Mr. David Paulites has a new documentary out called Missing 411, The UFO Connection. I have watched this movie twice. I took notes. And for anybody who doesn't know, just for the uninitiated, Missing 411 is a book series and in which former police officer, detective David Paulites has determined some interesting profile points when it comes to missing people who specifically mostly go missing in the woods, national forests. And those profile points are when you go missing, dogs typically can't pick up a scent of the person who has gone missing. Or you are discovered, your body is discovered, if you are discovered, your body is discovered in or near a body of water. Typically, you go missing at dusk or dawn. Your items are often returned. Even if your body's not found, your items are returned. If you are a hunter, your gun is found not that far away from your campsite. Or your clothes are neatly folded and placed on a log or near a rock. Just really weird things that happen in these Missing 411 disappearances. Now, David Paulites has been very guarded with his speculation about what may be happening to these people or who may be responsible in this newest documentary. And, Cretch, I'm going to give you the floor here because I don't have anything to show. I can't show the video. I do have a few clips. Can't show any of the video clips, but I can play some audio. So you have
you just want imagery of nuggets then?
We probably shouldn't reference nuggets during this segment, but maybe at the end, just for fun.
For fun.
But in this most recent documentary, he is making the connection between UFO sightings, UFO abductions, and missing people. And this is the first time that he's really gone on record saying that there could be a connection. Now, what he realized is that a lot of UFO sightings where they take place, they also happen around clusters of missing people, the Missing 411 profile. And as he was digging in a little deeper, he discovered some pretty strange eyewitness accounts. Pretty strange eyewitness accounts from people that were like part of search and rescue. Also, strange eyewitness accounts from people who just saw a UFO or some kind of weird anomaly in an area where people have gone missing. And so this whole entire movie is busted up into chapters. It's close to like right around 8 chapters. They go into the first one where it takes place in, I think, British Columbia, where a hunter went missing. By all accounts, he should have been found, very experienced hunter. But during this missing persons event, they brought out search and rescue. But lo and behold, they also brought out the SWAT team with guns, which the search and rescue found to be quite interesting and unusual. Typically, you don't send out people dressed in full camo, body armor, with automatic weapons out for a search and rescue mission. Then in the later on in the movie, David Paulites starts talking about UFOs that are abducting elk from the Northwest. And he's had, there's a number of MUFON cases and reports of UFOs near large herds of elk. And also, in this clip I will play, eyewitness testimony from several people swearing that they saw a UFO come down and pick up an elk and then take off. And I will play this segment right here. This took place, I believe, in 1999 when this event took place. So here is the Washington State elk abduction by Mount St. Helens.
Because these gentlemen were pretty shook up. I would say they were in their late 20s, early 30s. They were married, have families, very responsible folks. The 3 witnesses saw this object slowly descending and then went toward the elk herd, which caused the elk to run. But he was able to see the object picking up the elk.
It was not a big object at all. The witnesses emphasized how surprised they were at how small it was and still be able to lift an elk out of the forest.
What they did was they looked at the elk, they looked at the craft, and they said, well, okay, if the elk is this big, the craft's going to be somewhere between 6 and 8 feet long, about 5 feet wide, with a little indentation in the back, about 18 inches thick. It had a red and a white stripe that weren't lights, but the white stripe was like a bright enamel paint. The red stripe was a duller color.
So when the men in the group saw this craft take the elk out of sight,
Yeah.
what was the distance from where they were to where they finally saw it?
I would say the trees where it ran into was a quarter mile, but basically I think it became a small dot before it disappeared into the cloud cover. The object was silent, and as soon as it got over the elk was basically paralyzed. It looked like it was a statue. It was just stiff.
The distance of the elk from the craft always stayed consistent?
Yes.
How thick was the cable between the craft and the elk?
There was no cable. There was nothing discernible that was holding the elk to the craft.
So we have like 3 or 4 guys that witnessed this elk being lifted up into the sky by this relatively small UFO. And I think, Kresher, the picture you put up there was a pretty good representation of what they saw. Now,
Yeah, I've got a second one up now, and they're describing the UFO as being smaller than.
Yeah, it's not that big. It's like 7 feet by 5 feet, and like a red dash and then a white dash on it. Very thin, like they said, about 18 inches thick, but somehow able to use some sort of technology or something to pick up the elk and move it. Now, I didn't know this, but apparently there's a very big problem in the elk and deer population in the United States, specifically the Northwest, and moving to the east, which is like, I think it's called wasting disease, which is, it's something, I don't want to say it's like mad cow, but it's something along those lines. So the population of elk and deer are diseased. The disease, it's not a healthy population right now, and it's very concerning. I was totally unaware of that, and possibly there might be some connection there with these abductions and an unhealthy population of deer and elk. But it does seem to happen throughout these cases of missing hunters that he goes through. Typically, they are elk hunters, and they're fairly experienced at elk hunting. These hunters know their surroundings. They've spent years, if not decades, in the woods, and you would imagine they wouldn't be caught off guard by something like a bear. They'd be familiar with the terrain. They'd be familiar with the local predators, and something like that wouldn't catch them off guard. And considering half of the people their bodies are just not found. There's no like torn clothing, remnants of skeletal remains, anything like that. They are just gone. So like it goes on in the year 2000 in this area, Idaho. There was 3 gentlemen that were out camping in the year 2000 that they looked up and they saw a giant black triangle. David Paulites included this in this movie, even though there was no missing person attached to this event, simply because it was in the vicinity of where other people have disappeared in the missing 411 profile. They saw this black triangle plain as day. They said it was 80 feet above their camper, and each side of this triangle was 100 feet. And in the center was a red dot, which each corner having like a white light, and it was shining down on them. All 3 of them swear by it, and it kind of just freaked them out. Obviously, it hovered there for a while. They had a chance to look at it through binoculars, and it just drifted off silently, never to be seen again. And it scared the hell out of them that they never went back to that campsite. Now, that sighting reminds me of the Black Triangle, what a lot of people saw over Phoenix, Arizona in 1996, the Phoenix Lights. Some sort of relation there. You can't tell if it's aliens or some super secret government technology there. But the story goes on. The movie goes on, and it comes to a guy named Carl Higdon. Now, one of the other confounding things about the missing 411 cases is that sometimes when the bodies are found, it's as if they're dropped from a fairly great height, because the body typically will have like fall damage, like a large bash on the head, like they were dropped on some rocks, or they were dropped off just 10 to 20 feet above the ground, and they slammed down, and that caused their death. So fairly unexplainable, considering some of these people go missing in areas where there's really nothing like that, or they wouldn't probably try to attempt a climb like that. So something very curious. But in this case, Carl Higdon, he was out elk hunting, I believe, in the 70s. And he had a very interesting run-in. Now, this guy's old at this point. David, this is like the two longest clips I have. This guy's old at this point. Let me know if you can't hear it. I'll try to crank up the volume. But this is his experience going out elk hunting. And let's see if I can find out where exactly that was. But I'll find it while I play the clip. Here we go.
So that area where this happened, had you ever been there before?
No.
Describe the best you can where this happened at. Which forest were you in?
Medicine Bow National Forest. The area that this happened in was back to the north, right at the edge of the forest. So I got inside the National Forest. I walked down, maybe 3/4 mile. I seen 5 elk, but they didn't move. That was another strange thing.
That what? Say that again?
They didn't move. They just sat there.
Carl entered the woods, lined up on a series of elk, and he even said that the elk weren't moving. Leveled his rifle at the animals, pulled the trigger. He says his gun went off. The bullet came out the end of the barrel and hit some type of invisible force field and dropped to the ground. That bullet was recovered by Carl and later analyzed, and it did hit something. What we don't know, but the unusual nature of the travel of that ammunition is so odd that I've never heard of it in any type of research before.
You're standing there, you shot the rifle, you're turning, and you see the craft. Give me as much detail as you can on that craft, Carl.
Well, it was like looking at a piece of glass. Only it had borders around it. And I couldn't figure out what it was to start with.
So when you're looking at the cube, can you see through it and see forest behind it?
Yes.
Was there anything in the cube?
Not that I could see.
So it was just like a glass square on 4 sides, 7 foot by 5 foot, with nothing inside it, and you could kind of see through it.
Right.
What'd you think when you first saw it?
I didn't know. I just kind of stared at it because it was unusual. And this guy showed up and asked me if I was hungry. Told him yeah. So these package of 4 pills drifted over to me just like it was thrown at me. I took one. Next thing I know, I was in this cubicle, but it looked a lot bigger. There's 5 elk behind me. I said, "You got my elk?" He just looked at me and shrugged. Told me what his name was, Ozo. And they were down to get food. I said, "You guys always come down?" He said, "Yeah, we come down every so often. We get elk, deer from here, and we go to the ocean and get fish and take it back
So pretty incredible story. An elk hunter goes out by himself. Now, typically, like his wife would accompany him sometimes to go out elk hunting. On this occasion, it did not happen. He took a shot at some elk that he claimed were motionless. The bullet bounces off an invisible barrier. It turns out to be a cube, a glass-type cube that he can see through. A guy that I know just from the, and you have the image up there, that is the rendition of what he saw, this humanoid, like about 6 feet tall, wearing a black suit, almost a diver's suit, and he had a weird arm, a weird right arm, and almost no hand on his left arm, and he gave some pills to old Carl, and Carl like, hey, sure, I'll do some pills, I'll drop some goofballs right now, let's drop some acid and have some fun. And that's exactly what happened. He went into the UFO, or whatever this thing was. This you can call it a time cube or some kind of dimensional cube, but it was much bigger on the inside. When I heard that glass cube thing, it reminded me of the segment I did about the Meadow and that Skinwalker Ranch kind of place down in the South, in Alabama, where that group of people would see these cube-like objects in the meadow when they looked through a FLIR or night vision, but when they were looking at it with their naked eye, they saw nothing. They saw nothing there. And it also kind of reminds me of some other Missing 411 stuff where people wander into something and they can't get out. Like even a story back from the late 1800s where this guy was out hunting, his family couldn't find him, but when they went out to look for him, they could still hear his voice, as if he was still in the vicinity, but he was disguised by something. He couldn't find his way out, but he was alive somewhere, just unseen. It reminds me of that totally. Now, Carl's story does not stop there. I'm going to play this next clip here, and this will finish off the clips for a good chunk of Missing 411. Here we go. This is how the story partially winds up. I'll append it with some additional things that I found out.
Did Ozo seem to have a personality?
He seemed to. Like, when he talked to me, his lips never moved. I mean, it was back and forth. But he seemed like he knew a lot.
What color was his suit?
Black.
Black. The entire suit was black.
Completely black, because our sun burns them. So they have to wear black, and they wear like a scuba diver's suit. Covers them completely.
Did Carl ever say if he only had one hand and didn't draw the second? Or
Yes, he did not have another hand here, but he had like a cone over here.
Carl ever have an opinion if this was a male or female?
He figures it was a male.
A male.
And then this is a picture of the craft. And this was the controls. This is where Ozo sat. And this is where Carl sat. And there was still 5 elk in here also.
Then we lifted off, and then I could see, looked like a ball down below. I figured it was the earth. I didn't know.
And he was taken to someplace that could best be described as another planet. They took him behind the screen and eventually said, we don't need you. You don't fit what we need. The implication of Carl being is that he had a vasectomy and they needed somebody that was 100% fertile.
I said, why? I gotta go home. He said, don't worry, somebody come get you. They dropped me off and I hit the side of this hill and I rolled down it.
This is a critical point. When Carl explained that he was dropped, I have investigated hundreds of cases with unusual circumstances that show that someone was dropped into that location. This isn't something that's normally talked about in investigations. A lot of times it's just pushed off as happenstance and an accident that the person fell into the place. There's much more to this, and Carl has explained it.
What they didn't go into there, that Carl was, literally dropped off when the creature stated, there was more to this journey than just what was portrayed here in the documentary. So the creature, once they realized they couldn't harvest his life seed, his semen, they said, hit the bricks, buddy. Next thing you know, this creature said, we'll see you later. And that's when Carl realized that he was floating above the ground. Next thing he knew, the craft was gone, and Carl was standing on the edge of a rocky cliff. You know, not the most safe location when you just come back from visiting a planet 100,000 light years away. You're probably a little disoriented, probably a little jet lagged. And so he got lucky. He only dropped 10 feet, and he landed on the ground. He had considerable injuries, but nothing life-threatening. So that definitely calls back to all the other missing 411 unexplained head injuries, possibly broken bones, is that they're coming down, they're taking our elk, our deer, they're taking our semen, and they're using you up, and they're spitting you out. Now, the rest of the kind of the story that wasn't in here is like when he was out there hunting the elk, he realized the entire forest around him was silent. There was no animal noise, no insect noise, which is another tale of a missing 411 abduction scenario where everything just kind of falls silent around you. Then after he got abducted, after he went into the cube, they took him up into the air. Well, it turns out that they took him to a planet claiming, this comes from the alien, 160 light miles away from our Earth. That's how they phrased it, light miles. Now, after they took him and they examined his I don't want to be crude here, they examined his penis and his balls very thoroughly. Balls. And they wanted to see if he was able to reproduce.
Boner.
He was not. So they said, we got to take you back to your planet. Don't worry, we're going to put you on the edge of a cliff. You might die, so just look out for that. Now, when Carl was discovered by the police and his wife, he was very disoriented, very very scared. He was looking up at the sky saying, they took my elk. They took him to the hospital, and they gave him a full x-ray. And they realized that he was completely cured of all his tuberculosis scars on his lungs. Now, he had x-rays before, and they can compare the before and after. He had a horrible bout of tuberculosis, which scarred his lungs. They have x-rays of that. Coming back from that space adventure, no scars. They also gave him 3 separate polygraph tests, and he passed all of them, meaning that he believes what he experienced. He wasn't lying. He wasn't making anything up. He absolutely believes this experience happened to him. Now, they did, during the course of this movie, they did interview some ex FBI, if they had any sort of insight into this stuff. And there's one FBI guy that would go on record saying the government knows a lot more than what they're letting on, but it's very segmented. The FBI agent who David Paulites talked to was a firm believer in these paranormal events and UFOs. He attributes these events to interdimensional entities and not coming from a couple solar systems over. But I think it's kind of up for grabs at this point. So the documentary goes on to talk about the missing 411 cluster maps and how they all happen in or around water. Now, Gretchen, if you could find the missing 411 map and put that up on screen, because he addresses the lack of missing people running down the center of the United States. Now, in the center of the United States, if you guys can see, there is just no cluster zone of missing 411 profile people. Now, David Paulites says that he received an email from someone within the government saying that that region there just so happens to fit a deep underground aquifer. There is below the ground there, far below the surface, there is a lot of water, and it appears that they're not doing any abductions over that aquifer in the middle of the United States for whatever reason, but they're not doing it.
Give me a sec here.
Okay, if you can find the. So that's the aquifer, yeah, right there in the center of the country. So they're not doing any abductions there. Now, I read a story about Jacques Cousteau from I think the 60s or 70s, and he was doing a deep dive, I believe, near Salt Lake, and he said what he saw down there.
Oh, it was Lake Tahoe.
Lake Tahoe, yeah, sorry, Lake Tahoe. What he saw down there was absolutely mind-boggling, and he was as far down as he can go. Now it's rumored that this aquifer in the center of the United States is linked to a lot of other bodies of water and rivers in the United States by underground channels. And it's also been rumored that the deep underground military bases that our government operates could have like submersibles going through these different areas. And if aliens live, maybe they're down there and using these different channels to get out. But overall, a very interesting documentary, a different approach for David Paulites. I don't know where he goes from here, because to me, this is kind of like almost the apex. He has all these different books. He's cataloged all these different missing people. He's been very silent on a possible cause for these abductions, and now he's kind of played his hand a little bit. That they want your semen, they want your elk, and if you don't got that, well, they'll drop you off on your head. There you go.
I don't know why they're happening up there. They come down to Joe Rogan's house.
They could. He has another book called Off the Grid, which does profile missing people from within urban areas or suburban areas, that people that go missing in the city in very similar ways.
I'm just saying Rogan with the elk and the semen.
Absolutely.
Seems like he might have a lot of it.
He might be the one to get. He might be the big trophy for these aliens to grab. But yeah, he is an avid elk hunter. He's full of testosterone, and I hear he's just full of like a lot of semen. I don't know for sure. It's just a rumor on the street.
I did not want to even think about that.
Balls.
He's got a lot of it, enough to go around for everyone. But that is Missing 411, the UFO Connection in a nutshell. I watched it with my wife. She fell asleep about 2/3 of the way through. Just late. We should have watched it earlier. Fascinating information, though.
Did you wake her up suddenly? Did you put on a
wake
Bigfoot
up?
mask?
Get scared. Get scared that you're going to get abducted when you go out there. But yeah, it's not too far off of what a lot of other alien abduction reports have been.
Quick question on the Missing 411 thing. The general phenomenon always involves a body of water.
Yeah, typically.
Did that come up in not always, but for the most part, did that come up in the UFO connection that there were also nearby bodies of water in abduction or general location?
Yes. They told one story. So like the first case that I mentioned up in British Columbia, right near, like he disappeared, like right on a lake, and all these clusters that happen are near a fairly significant body of water. So he does touch on that quite a bit, and then he kind of wraps up the link to the aquifer to this last little story where there was this guy, I forget exactly, but I think it was Wyoming, possibly, that he said that he was talking to aliens, and the aliens told him to dig a well. And he had geologists come out, well diggers, say, "You're digging in the wrong area, buddy. You ain't going to hit anything." And he said, "Nope, I got this. The aliens told me to dig a well right here." And he kept going, and he busted through and actually tapped into the aquifer that I just mentioned. So these weird kind of like stories like that, whether it's alien or something totally different, it's all murky. And there's something going on here. The government definitely knows more than what they're letting on. But as they said in this documentary, that The government's not going to comment on something that it doesn't understand and it cannot control. So it's just going to shut up about it, not going to acknowledge these weird things because it can't control it.
Have you considered discussing your well scenario with the aliens?
My well?
Yeah.
Like the one I could use some help out there with my well. Get this guy Oslo out there. He's got a drill on his arm. Why not? Start drilling,
you
buddy.
Really discuss what the arm was, so they had like a cone on it. But
that's what he said, a cone on his arm. Like that'd be my first question for this thing. It's like, what's up with your arm, pal?
Yes.
That's where he keeps his ice cream.
Maybe like 2 scoops.
No, I was thinking, maybe you could ask the aliens, like, where on your property should you dig a new well to get one that produces better?
Yeah, maybe. Like, you think you can do dowsing rods for that kind of stuff, which we did do, and there's a lot of water where we dug our well. It was my first well to dig, and I did a lot of things wrong. You were
digging sideways.
Yeah, you gotta dig down.
Dig up, stupid.
Don't dig parallel to the plane.
Give us an email at ourbigdumbmouth@gmail.com. Check out obdmpod.com for all the social media and donation links.